Hi there, this is my channel, Yaru Walks. In the year 2024, I will embark on an epic walking journey across the United States. I plan to hike 8,000 miles and to cross the US 3 times, via the Appalachian Trail, Pacific Crest Trail, and Continental Divide Trail. In the hiking world, this is known as a calendar year Triple Crown and has been completed by only a handful of hikers in history. The calendar year Triple Crown has traditionally been completed by jumping within or between the trails throughout the year, primarily to avoid snow, but also to avoid other seasonal hazards such as floods, extreme desert heat, and wildfires. For my attempt, I'm trying to hike each trail on a continuous, unbroken, end-to-end footpath, and to accomplish this, I must hike across all 4 seasons. I will be posting weekly updates along the way, so you can join me for the journey. Wish me luck.
Pulling off the road real quick to show you these little caves. Like, you could easily cowboy camp under there and be protected. Actually, you wouldn't be. The rain would slip under you. But how cool would it be on a dry night to camp on the side of this cliff? This is so, like, it's almost like a human carved that out, but they didn't. Look at this one over here. It just keeps going along the cliff face. If you see the sign before it got bent, it said open range. Let's walk all the way around. Open range. So that is a closed range, and that is an open range. How cool. It actually gets kind of hot out here in the day, and then at night it gets down to about 20 degrees Fahrenheit, which is pretty cold. Not Colorado cold or Maine cold. But once you get up and walking before sunrise, it's definitely pretty chilly. But a neat thing about the desert is because it's so flat, you can really see the exact moment you're gonna walk into the sunlight each morning. And so that's about to happen. You can see off to my right where the sun runs. And if I zoom in, you can see that's where the sun starts, right there. And it's crazy. The second the sun sets, the temperature drops maybe 15 degrees Fahrenheit. And as soon as I touch that sunlight, the temperature is going to increase by about 10. I can see it right there. It's crazy how fast that works. As soon as the sun comes out, I have to sit down and take my jacket off because I'm finally warm. Still working my way down the road this afternoon. I stopped maybe an hour ago at this little ranch where they had set up a water cache on the side of the road, which is awesome and appreciated. This is officially the driest stretch that I've ever hiked anywhere. I have not seen a river. The last river I saw was just south of Cuba. And that was 100, I think I'm over 200 miles since then. There's been no water out here, and I don't think there will be from talking to a rancher back there at the TLC ranch until I hit the Gila River in a couple of days. You know the night sky is crazy dark when your cell phone can pick up all the stars. I think this night sky is the darkest night sky I've ever seen, second only to northern Arizona, southern Utah, and I mean the Oklahoma Panhandle is very dark too, but I think this is darker. Anyway, I was gonna say before, one of the most disappointing things about the Appalachian Trail and the Pacific Crest Trail for me was how lackluster the night skies were. You know, you're on these trails and you're far-ish from civilization, but you're close enough that the city glow from San Diego, Los Angeles, San Francisco, all these large towns off to the west of you still kind of blot out a lot of the stars. And I think the darkest night skies on the PCT were in Oregon And then once I got out on the CDT in Montana, Wyoming, like things got pretty dark again, but they're not this dark. It's surprising. I can't explain it, but New Mexico, Arizona, and Utah, all three desert states, had darker night skies than Wyoming, which I think has lower population density than New Mexico and Arizona. So I can't explain it, but for whatever reason, the deserts have the darkest night skies. And yeah, just New Mexico and Arizona and Utah are just particularly stunning. All right, I'm in Pie Town and approaching the toaster house up here. I can smell pinyon wood fire burning. You know you're at the toaster house because the front gate has toasters nailed to it. All the way down. It's in the back. And a giant shoe wall. From all the hikers this year. And all these antlers up front. And it has a balcony up top. And a hangout porch. It's so cool. It reminds me of like an AT hostel, but even like more minimalist. All right, I'm making my way south out of Pie Town. You can see this ancient little house behind me. I went into there are two places in town that sell pies. I went into whichever one was closer to the hostel that I stayed at last night, the Toaster House. Everything out here has a fun name, and everybody's super cool. But anyway, I was talking to the people who run the breakfast place in town / pie shop, and I don't wish I'd recorded. It was one of those moments where you'd rather just kind of hang out and see it yourself, but I'll relay it. The lady and husband couple who are from Alabama, who run I don't know the name of the place in town, but the local breakfast place, kind of recounted the history of Pie Town to me. And so if I recall correctly, which is probably going to be 90% accurate, the story of Pie Town is that the settlers came out here in the early 1900s, Okies, during the Dust Bowl. So the original founder of the town was Clyde Norman from Oklahoma, and he set up a general store on a cattle route and migration route from Oklahoma to California. And these Okies would pass through, and some of them fell on hard luck on their travels and couldn't even make it to California. So they ended up breaking down out here. So the original kind of, heritage of Pie Town is Oklahomans trying to migrate to California, which is neat. And anyway, Norman, who ran the store in town, basically as the settlers were coming through, they said, oh, he was buying some type of like dessert from someone else and then selling it. And then the cowboys coming through said, you should really make your own pies. It doesn't make any sense to be paying someone else money, and selling their goods. Why don't you just make your own pies? And he's like, well, that's a good idea. So he starts making pies in town and selling them to the cowboys coming through and the Okies coming through, and everybody loved it. So then at some point that guy died or sold the shop, and one of the buildings that I walked past earlier was that general store and the post office. These collapsed buildings. I asked them later, what were those buildings I walked past? There were these old stone buildings on this giant 400,000 acre ranch. And they said, oh, that was the post office and the general store. I was like, no way. It's so cool to know the history. And so anyway, later on, when I guess all those Okies still lived here, they petitioned the local post office to name the town. And there was like a town discussion, like, what are you going to name it? And everyone agreed, obviously, we have to name it Pie Town after the general store. And so the post office says, we're not going to name this town Pie Town. That's absurd. You have to have a more distinguished name. And then the local cowboys were adamant. They were insistent that it be called Pie Town. They would not accept any other name. And so eventually the store clerk gave in, and they literally named it Pie Town. And it's funny because as I was coming south, I kept seeing Pie Town, and I was like, is this a real town, or is this just like someone's house called Pie Town? Like, I just couldn't, subconsciously, I couldn't really fathom that a town was literally called Pie Town, because I've just never seen an American city with such an informal name, if that makes sense. And so anyway, that's the story of how Pie Town got its name. And then there's an annual pie festival that takes place in September each year. I'm not sure if that still happens or not out here. The way they were telling the story was that it happened in the 1940s. So it still happens. And originally, all of the ranchers would meet up in the 1940s to have a cow cook or something. They would kill a cow, and then they would barbecue it in the picnic public park area out here. And then they would have a picnic between all the ranchers. And there's like maybe 100 different families out here in a 50-mile area. And so every year they'd have an annual picnic, which eventually turned into now the Pie Town Pie Festival, which still happens in September every year. So anyway, that's some of the background on Pie Town for you. And I spent last night at the Toaster House in the Pie Town, a open, not necessarily to the public, but open to CDT hikers, hostel that is donation based and not for profit. And yet another cool quirk of the thru hiking community and culture. It was really neat walking through there and looking at all these photos, postcards, mementos, little knickknacks that like decorate the house. And I feel like the Toaster House really symbolizes the amazing community that I feel like I'm a part of as a thru hiker. I'm more of an independent person. I would prefer to have maybe 2 or 3 good friends than 20 acquaintances. And so I've never really had a sense that I could ever feel like I belong to a community. But I do actually feel like I belong to the thru hiking community, because it's not because it's a particular way, but because it's such an eclectic group of people, even internationally. And they are so kind of non-materialistic, non-money oriented, adventure seeking, and so deeply interested in experiencing new things that may or may not even be on the comfort zone. But more broadly, just experiencing new things. To me, that is the funnest group of people in the world. It's the kind of person you could just be like, put 20 thru hikers' faces on a dartboard and throw it. Whichever one sticks, hops and shotgun in your car, and you're going to drive from here to Montana. You could pretty much guarantee that whoever it falls on, it's like odds are like probably 199 out of 200 that they'd be a fun travel companion. I've heard people say that they don't like hiking desert or don't like New Mexico. I can't fathom how or why, particularly because it's very remote out here, but in an interesting way. And the night skies are so freaking dark out here. Like, I'm filming with a cell phone and I can pick up the stars. I'm gonna throw a long exposure photo on top of the video so you can see something closer to what I'm seeing right now. So I've transitioned now out of kind of these like flat plains with canyons into what I think is the Gila National Forest. So I'm back in the trees. I will say, quite literally, my favorite environment to hike in is just any area with a abundant forest. You hear so many more sounds around you. Squirrels, birds, animals just kind of going about their day, pecking at things. And this forest with the dry grass kind of reminds me of 2 places. It reminds me of northern Arizona, like the Coconino, and it reminds me of the areas in Northern California out east of San Francisco, kind of like east of the Napa Valley, although that was much drier. But anyway, it feels great to be back in the forest now at this point, after a long road walk through Colorado. So I said, entering this forest, I feel like I've kind of entered Arizona almost. And as soon as I made my way up here, I found a water source that's full of murky, muddy water for cows. And this is what, probably for the entire northern half of the Arizona Trail, what every water source looked like. It was just a mud pit that they pump with water once or twice a year to keep it full for the cattle. And it has the flavor of cattle even after you filter it. So anyway, it's good to be back out in desert country where I get to drink from cow tanks. All right. I am now, I don't know the name of the mountain. I think it's Mangus Mountain. Approaching the top of Mangus Mountain. I'm at around 9,500 feet. And the reason I'm recording is because there's a little bit of snow here. But you will see the snow is much less than what I was encountering back when I was trying to make it into Cuba over that mountain. And this bids well for my future travel southbound, because this is right around the maximum height I'll be hitting going through the Gila Wilderness, 9,500. So if this is what I'm dealing with here, I have high hopes that the Gila will be like this, but even better, just because it's further south. So we'll have to wait and see. And I've hit so far no private property lock gates. And my concern was taking these alternates, if I hit any any locked gate private property, that I would then have to turn around and go back and alternate out to the CDT as my route. And that's what would have pushed my mileage up into the upper 40s. And considering how many issues I've run into in New Mexico with strange property boundaries, it felt like about a 50% chance. So my hiking range to finish on time was somewhere in the range of 33, I think, ish miles per day to 40 miles per day if I kept hitting problems. And as of right now, I have not hit any problems since departing Cuba, which is awesome, because that's enabled me over the last couple of days to take recovery days at lower mileages to allow my muscles to recover from pushing it for those 3 basically 40-mile days. And then I'm gonna have to go back to pushing hard again. I don't know, probably starting tomorrow. There are all sorts of beauty I've learned hiking, but my favorite is simple beauty. And this is simple beauty. After doing a fair amount of road walking, I wondered what condition my feet would be in once I'm back on rugged trail. This is fairly rugged. I mean, I've seen worse, but this is pretty rugged. And it's funny, every bit of strength I've developed over the course of the year is still with me. The AT was probably the most rugged of the 3 long trails and really broke my ankles down. And then on the PCT, it was much cleaner trail, and that allowed them to recover. And then on the CDT, it's just been back and forth between rough trail and road walks. And I feel like the roads have really allowed my feet to recover. And I was just genuinely curious once I got back on rougher terrain out here, what it would be like to hike. I was wondering if my feet would hurt more. And I'm sure they will hurt a little more at the end of the day, but the remarkable thing is how the strength really does stay with you over the months. And so now my knees are so much stronger at this point than any point in the year. And my ankles, they don't roll anymore. And I'm basically able to hike down pretty steep hills at full speed without any ankle turning, Really excellent foot accuracy. So just, you know, it's subconscious at this point, but just not stepping on rocks. It's kind of like, well, there I go, stepping on a rock. But that would happen a lot more often before. And it's hard to walk downhill actually at full speed. And by full speed, I really mean like the fastest speed you could maintain if you're in an airport trying to walk. That's about how fast I'm moving right now. And it's just really neat that I can sustain that pace almost all day, other than breaking to eat food. And I can sustain it on trail, and I can sustain it on downhills, which really put pressure on your knees, on your ankles. You almost have to, like on downhills, almost like lean back and fight it. And this is a mid-level downhill, and I'm able just to blast down it now. It's really cool, honestly. Back on the official CDT route. Holy cow, it is beautiful out here. I cannot begin to describe how beautiful it is out here. Like, first off, the night skies are as dark as it gets. Let me turn my headlamp off. Again, this is being recorded with a cell phone camera, which indicates how insanely bright the stars are. Headlamp back on. And I'm just cruising through the desert, and it's different from the Arizona desert, I'll say that. But it's a different feeling when you're off the Forest Service roads and you're actually out in the woods. It's so nice. I've gotten several comments this year about how night hiking is a bad thing to do. And those comments are so ignorant. It's literally painful to me. I'm not hurt by those comments. Just the ignorance is so painful. And then I remind myself it's a bad faith comment. Oh my God, I mean, honestly, like, night hiking in the desert is literally maybe my favorite style of hiking. Now this is hiking. I think I'm at 9,500-ish feet. Just reached the peak of this mountain. And it's the early morning. It's not sunrise time anymore, just the early morning hour. Chilly, crisp, good. And at points I'll break through the trees and I'll have a view out off in the distance, and I'm way up high. I'm always shocked by, just after about 30 minutes of walking, if you stop and turn around, how high you can get relative to where you just were. Here's an example of the view. Now for me, sprinting across winter, coming into the Gila, last night sleeping, like it was like, I'm guessing 40 degrees Fahrenheit last night. I almost wanted to take my sleeping bag off. Like, I almost thought about it because I was perfectly warm. Going through winter in Colorado, or at least winter conditions in Colorado, the conditions I experienced were winter, even though it was technically still late fall. And then transitioning to New Mexico, but now really coming down here to the desert where the air is crisp. The nights are not as cold as they were up in even southern Colorado, and the days are getting kind of hot. As I walked through this forest this morning, I kept having that sense of like the arrival of spring, and I had to keep reminding myself, because I've also become kind of removed from a sense of time, because time no longer has the same relevance to me this year that it does during a normal working year. I have to remind myself, wow, it's the end of December. Winter's still on its way. You just ran your way out of winter south. And so I think winter's still going to be arriving here at some point with snow and cold temperatures. But I have actually been racing winter south all fall, and it caught me in the Wind River Range, and it held me in its grip in Colorado, in northern New Mexico. But then it slowed down, but I just popped out of winter into what is like the very late end of fall down here in the desert. And so it's just neat to put all that in perspective and context, and also to observe how my instinctive response, subconsciously almost, was to categorize the feeling this morning as being that of the arrival of spring, which is just what it feels like, although it's not. I've reversed time back into late fall by hiking south fast, which is, I think, interesting. It's crazy how quickly the conditions can change. I've been going up and down mountains all day today that are grades that are maybe comparable to what I saw in Maine, and trail quality that's comparable to Maine. Just crappy rock. It was pretty clean trail yesterday, but not today, and a lot more up and down. New Mexico's been very flat so far, but also not flat today. Another pretty night in the Gila. I finally pushed past the ups and downs in the trail that was impossible to follow, and connected to a forest road. And I'm now officially on the Gila River alternate, which, if there are two big alternates on the CDT, the two biggest, I think, would be the Big Sky and the Gila. And so both of those shave miles off, but the Gila particularly is so much prettier than the CDT route, which follows the actual true continental divide. And so this is an example of one of those forks in the road on the CDT where, you know, a traditional redliner who has the philosophy of following the red line would be challenged a little bit, at least be tempted a little bit to consider taking the Gila alternate, which doesn't even really shave that many miles off. I don't really know how many, maybe like 30 miles, but is, from what I understand, one of the prettiest sections on the entire CDT and in all of the United States. The most beautiful section is ahead. It's a large river canyon. I really can't describe it because I've never even seen a photo of it. I just heard several different hikers refer to the Gila as their favorite place they've ever hiked, and that's coming from double crowners. And I will say that the whole Gila wilderness area so far has been amazing. It's so remote. I've only seen one car. Let's see. I saw headlights last night way off in the distance, but I've personally come across, I guess, two cars at this point in the last 2 days out here. So it's like a slightly more populated version of the Bob Marshall. The Bob Marshall is definitely more remote than this, but the Gila is amazing so far. So every single day has looked different out here for the last 3 days. It's kind of rolling prairie with beautiful trees. So. my way down into this canyon. This is the first natural water source I've encountered, and then the creek that fills it for the last couple miles since coming out of Cuba. So I've hit little cattle ponds, which I think are filled with water trucks, but this is the first natural water source in over 200 miles. I'm not sure how long it's been since Cuba, but well over 200 miles. All right, so I'm at a fork in the road here. Off to the right, if I zoom in, you can see that little canyon. That's where the Gila River low route starts. So it goes into that canyon. I'm just going to call it Gila Canyon. In the Gila River, at some point, this canyon picks up with the Gila Canyon, and then the Gila River runs at the bottom of it. The Gila High Route starts here and goes off to the left. So at some point, I'll be up on this canyon top on the Gila High Route, kind of going along the top of the canyon. And then the Gila Low Route will be down in the canyon, kind of snaking across the river. In my experience, walking in the bottom of a canyon is a lot slower than what you typically find at the top of a canyon. And so since I'm expecting poorer trail conditions and something like 50 or more water crossings left and right moving through the canyon, my plan for now is to take the high route. And then I'll take a look in the canyon at some point and see if I can assess for snow and see what kind of progress I'm making moving along the high route. And if I'm able to get down into the canyon at some point, I'll give it a try, maybe tomorrow morning. So for now, I'm going the high route. This is super frustrating. The trail that I'm on just terminated out here. Well, it's supposed to fork, and you can see maybe over here. Basically, it didn't fork, and where it should have forked, the way I don't want to go has a trail. There should be a fork right over here. I walked all around out there. There's no fork in the trail. So I think I'm gonna have to backtrack I think it's like 2 miles back to the road, and then walk around another 3 miles, and hopefully there'll be a trail further off to the east. If not, then I no longer know what's real. All right, I am in the Gila River Canyon. I decided this morning to at least start out in the low route, see how it goes, and then maybe trek my way back up to the top of the canyon if it gets too slow or too cold with all the river crossings. Just showing you how cold it is out here. The river is frozen. It's got to get cold to freeze a river. And it's not totally frozen to where I could walk across it, unfortunately. That would make it actually a really fun way to hike the canyon. I just made it across those ice bridges. I can't believe it. I'm maybe 5 miles into the canyon and I've still not gotten my feet wet, which might be a world record. Now I'm just walking down the frozen river. I've got several inches of ice here. Some of the top layer is a little less dense, but otherwise I've just been cruising. It's December 27th. I still got to get to the Mexican border. And I'm not even to Doc Campbell's yet. So I've got to accelerate somehow. It's a top-down view of what I've been hiking through. Still working my way along. Last time I gave an update, I think I was, if you see that cliff when I remove my finger in a second, I was on the other side over here, looking that way. So I'm pausing right now because this has happened to me hiking the Arizona Trail and on the PCT. This is the exact moment that I recognized a shift in, I guess, what I would call the ecosystem. You see the appearance of a yucca plant, and then I don't know what type of cactus this is. It looks almost like dreadlocks or something, but this has appeared. And then when I paused, you know, I noticed that I had seen more of that cactus just back on the trail there, but this is right where it happened. The beginning of a shift to, I don't know if it'd be the mid or the low desert, but there's a clear shift in the happening in the plants that are around me. And what's interesting is just before the shift happened, I came up and over a peak, and then I had this broad view out over all these mountains, and I thought to myself, man, it feels like I'm shifting to a new type of, again, I say the word ecosystem. I don't know what the definition of an ecosystem is, but you know, it looks like I'm shifting to a slightly different climate from what I was in before. Look at this. This is the first time I'm seeing these cactuses. Boom, right there. That's so cool. I literally am walking and film that. That's the first time I saw those cactuses on the CDT. Boom, right there. I think those are prickly pear cactuses because they have the fruit right there. I've had dry feet all day, and then I hit a horse trail that forces you to go through the creek. No other way across. So I just saw some hikers up here. There's a beaver down. And when I saw them, it triggered a realization, which is that I haven't met hikers like on a trail since Montana. Like the entire way through Wyoming, I met nobody walking. I met nobody in Colorado walking. And I met nobody in New Mexico so far walking on the roads or on trail anywhere that I can recall. So funny. I had a fun little snafu a couple hours ago. I have someone out here staging equipment for me and caching food and water, which helped me to expedite my travel time to where I'm not kind of hanging in towns, and I'm able to carry less weight, which enables you to not really hike faster. Well, yeah, probably hike faster, but also go longer. Anyway, we ran into Silver City, and I left my bag sitting on the ground on the side of the road out here. And in that hour and a half, when we came back, the bag was gone. Luckily, at that time, the bag just contained morning clothes for the cold weather. So both of my jackets are in there, and my Garmin Messenger, and then like charging cables, and and gloves and a beanie. That's about it. Just the warmest weather layers in my Garmin. And what's funny is the Garmin was tracking, pinging my location every 10 minutes, updating every 4 hours. So probably whoever took it dropped it off at a ranger station, I would think, or was a ranger. But either way, so long as whoever that was doesn't know what a Garmin is and doesn't know that it's satellite tracking its location every 10 minutes, it should be tracking wherever my bag is going to. So hopefully I can get that back before I get to the border. Hiking without a headlamp right now. More fun news is I just got the word that the route that I was hoping to hike, I'll throw a map up to describe what I'm referring to. I'll show the 3 routes I could hike to the border. The first route is the shortest route to the border by road. I don't know the distance, but maybe I'll put it in text. The second route and the third route each go to the CDT terminus, which is also at the border, but it's further south. I consider a border-to-border crossing roughly following the CDT through hike. But I would like to go to the CDT terminus to finish. And Route 2 runs across a desert stretch, across a highway, and then could follow either the CDT or another road across the Chihuahua Desert down to the CDT terminus. The third route, sorry, let me back up. The second route, I just found out that first stretch across that first stretch of desert from Silver City down to that highway goes across state trust and private land. So there are gates or private land that I cannot go across. As a result, my only options remaining are option 1, which I could get to the border at moving 29 miles a day, or option 3, which goes out to Lordsburg, and then over to the CD terminus, which is more or less the actual true CDT route. And if I go that way, according to my calculations, I have to move around 45 miles per day over the next 3 days, assuming I make it to Silver City tonight. I haven't decided which way I'm going to go yet. I'm leaning towards wanting to go the longer route. I literally do not know if I'm capable of pushing 45 miles a day, but if I did go that way, I'm like 99% confident I would not hit a gate. So it wouldn't go any higher than that. Hard to decide. Either way works, but I had been envisioning finishing at the CDT terminus, not the alternate terminus. Yeah, hard to decide, but anyway, just got that update right now. And I found out that the Garmin on my bag was actually turned off, so my bag has just disappeared. So if someone's nice, they might try to send me a letter to let me know that they found the bag because my ID was in there. But otherwise, I just lost 2 jackets, my bag, and a flash drive that contained about, I think, the last 12 episodes that I've uploaded to YouTube, which is pretty frustrating, but it's also okay because it's what happened. So anyway, I think I maybe even said somewhere back on trail, never say you're in the home stretch because there's always one more F you in the trail. So well, I can't say I'm in the home stretch now, but this was definitely maybe the last FU of the CDT. So all it could throw at me now would be rain or wind, I think. Who knows though, maybe I could get hit by a car. So anyway, those are the options. I'll figure out tonight what I want to do.
Can I get that Guinness, please?
Guinness?